At 1 minute before 1 o'clock this morning, the switchboard at the Capitol received a phone call. A man's voice said a bomb would go off in the building in half an hour. At 1:30 in the morning, it did, in a small, unmarked restroom on the ground floor of the Senate side, next to a barber shop and near several small offices, including one committee hearing room. For a report on the first serious damage to the nation's foremost structure since the British burned it in 1814, here is ABC congressional correspondent Bob Clark.
There was alarm for a time that other bombs might still be hidden inside the Capitol. Police used dogs specially trained to sniff out explosives in a painstaking search both inside and outside the building. The single bomb set off by a timing device left the men's room a shambles, plumbing demolished, bricks and plaster ripped from walls. Army and FBI experts sifted the debris, seeking a clue to the nature of the explosive. There was heavy damage to the nearby barber shop. Windows were smashed there, and 100 feet away in the Senate restaurant, where tables were overturned and a priceless stained glass mosaic destroyed. Damage estimated in the hundreds of thousands of dollars might have been far worse, but for the 3-foot-thick walls in the oldest part of the Capitol. As it was, the violent explosion ripped off doors in nearby conference rooms. There was no damage to the Senate chamber itself on the floor above. Daylight revealed more smashed windows and debris. Tourists were barred from the Senate wing all day, but the entire Capitol will be reopened to the public as soon as possible. Everyone entering the Senate wing today had to pass a security check. The Capitol's police chief told how an operator received the bomb threat.
This building will blow up in 30 minutes. Evacuate the building. This is in protest of the Nixon involvement in Laos.
When George Washington, the chief of a new and shaky union, laid the cornerstone of the Capitol building, he said, "It may be relied upon it is the progress of this building that will inspire or depress the public confidence." When Lincoln first met Confederate negotiators towards the end of the Civil War, the first thing the Southerners, all former congressmen, asked was, "Tell me, sir, how is the Capitol?" Well, after yesterday's desecration, the old place is today a little depressed, and confidence is not unshaken. ABC Capitol Hill correspondent Bob Clark reports.
Officials in charge of security at the Capitol, along with Army bomb experts, were summoned to a Senate hearing. The immediate problem is to guard against any more bombings while keeping the Capitol open to the public. It was clear from the testimony about yesterday's bombing that this won't be easy.
It probably was, or could have very well been, a clock delay device, and it very likely could have been normal dynamite, which is very easy to obtain. It could have been, 15 to 20 pounds of dynamite. That amount of dynamite is very easy to bring in a briefcase.
Police did their best to keep the Capitol under tight security today, with checkpoints set up to examine packages and briefcases. We tried out the security system, carrying a briefcase into a House office building, past police guards, through an underground tunnel and into the Capitol without being stopped or searched. While we may have been recognized by some guards, it's clearly almost impossible to enforce security through all 6 buildings linked by tunnels to the Capitol. Bob Clark, ABC News, Washington.
There were telephoned bomb threats to 22 other Washington buildings yesterday and 2 more today, all false alarms. Credit for the Capitol bombing was claimed in a letter received by the Associated Press today, signed by the Weather Underground and postmarked Elizabeth, New Jersey. Nevertheless, Attorney General Mitchell said today there is no evidence of a conspiracy, just a lot of people getting in on an act.
Ho Chi Minh's birthday was also marked in Washington. A bomb exploded early this morning in the Pentagon, and left-wing terrorists telephoned newspapers to say they were responsible. Stephen Gear reports.
The explosion destroyed one of the Pentagon's 140 women's restrooms and blasted out a wall on the 4th floor. No one was injured. The explosion came at 1 a.m., just moments after the Pentagon's duty officer received a warning based on one of a number of calls to newspapers, one of which said the Pentagon would be bombed in celebration of Ho Chi Minh's birthday. Rumors of other bombs plagued officials during the day, but sweeps of the building turned up nothing. Speaking for the Pentagon was an Air Force officer called to duty early this morning.
No one was hurt, fortunately, but I'd like to point out
that only through good fortune that the people who work in the Pentagon at night were not seriously hurt or killed. There are quite a few people working right down the hall from where the explosion took place who could have very easily have been in that area at the time. They had no warning at all and could have been seriously hurt or killed by this irresponsible act.
Water from pipes ruptured in the blast seeped down to floors below the restroom, interrupting operation of an Air Force computer bank for several hours, soaking office furniture and equipment, and shutting down some stores operated as concessions in the concourse. So far, there's no monetary estimate of the damage. Much of the Pentagon is a public area with visitors and tourists roaming through the halls, but security was tighter today than yesterday. Ironically, before the explosion this morning, the order had gone out here at the Pentagon to tighten security measures. Because of anti-war demonstrations scheduled for this weekend in Washington and plans to block access to the Pentagon on Monday, packages were to be inspected beginning at 7 o'clock this morning. That's 6 hours after the explosion. Stephen Gear, ABC News, at the Pentagon.
People calling themselves members of the Weather Underground last night planted bombs in federal office buildings in Washington and Oakland, California. The group, apparently an offshoot of the old radical weathermen of the 1960s, claimed the bombs were set to protest American support for South Vietnam and Cambodia. We have reports, first from ABC's Ted Koppel at the State Department.
There are very few positive things to say about planting an explosive in a government building, but as an attention-getting device, it's hard to argue with the effectiveness of that bomb that went off in a third-floor washroom here at the State Department early this morning. About 20 offices, all of them empty at the time, were damaged, a few of them by the explosion itself, most of them by water leaking out of ruptured pipes. State Department spokesman Robert Anderson read a prepared statement in behalf of Secretary Kissinger.
All of us, including Secretary Kissinger, are relieved that no one was killed or injured by this totally senseless act.
At midday, the Associated Press got a phone call from a man saying he was with the Weather Underground and that bombs would explode at the Departments of Interior and Agriculture and the Smithsonian before the day was out. Some 4,500 workers at the Interior Department were eating lunch when they were told to evacuate immediately. Most went home for the day, others stayed to watch. Police used dogs specially trained to sniff out bombs in their search of the Interior Department building, but no bomb was found. At the Smithsonian, security was increased, people were watched, but there was no evacuation. Again, tightened security, but no evacuation at the Department of Agriculture. During a search, someone found a suspicious package, but it turned out to be some old bottles of wine. David Garcia, ABC News, Washington.
That other bomb threat was a dramatic one at a military induction center in Oakland, California today. We get details from newsman David Louie of station KGO-TV in San Francisco.
Police cordoned off 6 blocks around the downtown Oakland induction center after the news media received telephone bomb threats. When no bomb went off after an all-night vigil, a dog trained to detect explosives led a search party into the building. The dog failed to find the bomb, but a federal agent did in the Navy's 7th floor offices. A Navy demolition crew rushed in. The device was found above a panel in the false ceiling inside a black suitcase. With daylight came scores of spectators held behind police lines. As tense minutes turned into hours, the black suitcase bomb was pulled from the side door at the end of a rope. The demolition team, black-suited and shielded, approached the bomb with a lead pellet blanket and detonating devices. After 2 attempts, the case caught fire, in turn setting off the charge. With the bomb still ticking, officials said they had no choice but to blow it up in the street.
In view of the fact that it was ticking and that it was apparently that volatile, any more jarring might have done it, and so we figured there wasn't that much that would have done that damage in the center of the street like that. But you can imagine in a contained room, if it were contained, that large an explosive device would have probably blown at least the corner of that building and probably most of that floor out.